Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers won 111-102 to improve to 36-21 on the season. They are number 4 in the Western Conference, just 2 games back of the Denver Nuggets in the win column. So they are right there for number 3. They did not come out of this one unscathed, though. With Rui Hachimura suffering a left knee strain. We do not know his status for tomorrow's game against the LA Clippers. Lakers have a back-to-back at home against the Clippers, and we don't know the severity of Rui's injury in general. JJ Redick said that he's expecting an update within the next 24 hours as to, I'm sure there'll be some imaging and stuff going on in the morning. But before we get into the potential impact of that and how this game played out, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to everybody in the chat right now. Shout out to the late night gang. I know this is a late one. Luka ended up speaking very late, and of course, I'm not going to miss Luka talking. So he ended up going almost at 11:30, which is the latest he's spoken yet. So did not end up, then had to transcribe it, and did not end up getting out until almost 11:45-ish. So shout out to everyone in the chat, though. I appreciate you all, late night gang. I know for some of you it's early gang, some of you it's late night gang, but I appreciate you, and shout out to everybody in the chat. So let's get into it. The overarching takeaway tonight for me was just keep stacking wins. So Lakers win their 4th straight game. They are 16-4 in their past 20 games, and that's really been this sample size now of them being a top 10 offense, top 10 defense, and just looking like a legitimate championship contender. I made the argument that I think right now they are the 4th best team in the NBA behind Boston, OKC, and Cleveland. And really with the way they're playing, you could potentially argue them a little bit higher. I would say maybe even as high as number 3. I'm not quite ready to put them above Boston or OKC yet, but they've been right there with Cleveland, Denver, whoever else you want to throw in that mix of like top 3 or 4 teams in the league. But tonight followed a similar script to some of their post-All-Star break games outside of the Denver game, which right now has been a little bit of an exception in terms of being dominant on both sides of the ball. The Lakers had to grind out a win against a lesser opponent. And on paper, Minnesota is not a lesser opponent, but they were without Rudy Gobert and without Julius Randle. Anthony Edwards ends up getting ejected in, I believe it was mid to late third quarter. He had 26. He played 26 minutes, had 18 points, and he picked up his first technical foul at the end of the first quarter. Actually, in between the first and second quarter, him and Vando got into it. They both got assessed double technicals, and then Vando triggered the second technical again, getting under Ant's skin, and then Ant gets thrown out. And then on his way off the court, he throws the ball into the stand. So I wondered if, like, especially with the first technical, because it technically wasn't during gameplay, like maybe that was one that you could argue could have been like rescinded, but I don't think it's going to be rescinded. And it's of note because now Ant has 16 technicals, which means he will be suspended for 1 game. So Lakers are facing a Minnesota team that frankly doesn't have 3 of their 4 best players, and certainly their 2 best offensive players in Ant and Randle over that final, again, quarter plus. And Minnesota actually goes on a run. They tie the Lakers in the third quarter in terms of it was 26-26, and then they outscore LA by 2 in the fourth and get it, I believe, within 4. What was the closest they got? Maybe 3. And then the Lakers, rally and go on their own run. Luka hits that insane 28-foot fadeaway to beat the shot clock. Basically the same shot he hit against Dallas that was rescinded because he stepped out of bounds. This time he stayed in bounds, and just the play of the evening, like just an incredible shot. That's why they call him Luka Magic. And you saw his dad in the crowd bury his face in his hands. And after the game, Luka was asked about it, and he was like, he was not impressed by that. He was saying, I finally made a shot. And so Luka already has kind of had that playful demeanor with the media of self-deprecation and kind of joking around. But the Lakers find a way to get this one. They prevent what would have been a really disappointing collapse. And of note, as I mentioned, Rui ends up going out. I believe it was, honestly, there were so many injuries throughout this game. It's all kind of been a blur, but I believe it was the third quarter with Rui, pretty early in the third quarter. And he wasn't the only one that got banged up. LeBron was kind of limping at one point in the fourth. Luka banged knees, and he was limping and grimacing at times. Jackson Hayes, I thought he went back to the locker room, but the Lakers clarified that he just went out into the tunnel to stretch, but he still exited the game to go stretch in the tunnel with the strength and conditioning staff. And Gabe also came up hobbled in the fourth quarter. So it was just like Lakers almost became a mash unit out there. And then to compound matters, they play the Clippers on Friday night. So basically no turnaround. I wouldn't be surprised if a player or two ends up not playing, in addition to likely Rui. I would also assume Rui ends up not playing. But the important thing was the Lakers won this game, and it was not pretty. Several of their recent wins have not been pretty, but wins are wins in the Western Conference. They are maintaining their spot in the top five, really in the top four right now, and they're jockeying with Houston. And they are right there. If like the next time Denver loses, and if the Lakers can beat the Clippers, they play them a couple times this weekend, like they could be the 3 seed as early next week. So that's within striking distance, and that's before they have a tougher schedule coming up. They play the Knicks on Tuesday, then they go on that. They have one more game on Thursday, then they go out on that East Coast trip, which is Boston, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Denver back to back. But that we're getting ahead of ourselves here. I think the big thing was like the Lakers just continue to stack wins, even if they're not the prettiest. I think like the defensive end has been pretty. The offensive end has been very ugly, and we will get into a little bit more with both of those. The stat of the night to me was 46 free throw attempts for the Lakers, and really when you combine that with the Timberwolves, 26 free throw attempts, 72 free throw attempts between these two teams. But 46 for the Lakers was a season high. The previous season high was 41. However, they made just 32 of those free throws, 69.6%, which if they make 38, 40 of those, we are talking potentially about a blowout here. But instead, LA misses a bunch of free throws, keeps Minnesota in it. And they just could not buy a bucket tonight in general. Shot 41.5% overall, 26.8% on threes. They made 11 of their 41 threes, and then just 32 of 46 at the free throw line, 69.6%. So takeaway number one is the Rui absence is potentially a big absence. And like Rui has been the Lakers' fourth or fifth best player for most nights. And really, I think the totality of this stretch has probably been their fourth best player. And before the game, JJ talked about his defensive improvement and how the Lakers have seen incremental growth throughout his season, but they also try to simplify things with Rui, where defensively, Rui is a switching player. And that no matter what, like Rui is going to be switching. That is how they're going to use him. And when Rui is out there, that is the call. It is switch. And they feel like he's gotten better at that, at defending different types of players. And then also off the ball, they feel like he's really grown and understood his low man assignments, his help assignments, and just the way that the Lakers want to play defense. So he was singing Rui's praises before the game. He had a little bit of a rough game by his standards, 5 points, 2 of 6 shooting in his 18 minutes, 3 rebounds, a couple of assists. But for what it was worth, the Lakers were a plus 21 in his 18 minutes. So like Rui continued to just still make impact winning. And if he is out for, I mean, if it's a couple games, it's one thing, but if he is out for a week, 2 weeks, multiple weeks, that is a significant blow to the Lakers. I just talked about it a few days ago, earlier in the week in my first mailbag, that the Lakers, as currently constructed, cannot really afford to lose any of their top 8 players to injuries. And really, again, when we're talking about arguably their 4th or 5th best guy, depending on the night, depending on the matchup, whatever, like that's a pretty big loss. And Rui has played a critical role in the starting lineup. And I've made the case that I do think Dorian Finney-Smith makes more sense because of his defense and just his defensive versatility and being more of a wing stopper. But Rui, like the Rui lineups have largely been good. He has largely done his role, and he has fit into kind of similar to last season when the Lakers were going on their run in the second half of the season. Him being the number 4 option is just too much for a lot of teams to handle. And he's also done a really good job as a small ball big in defensive rebounding, protecting the rim, guarding Jokic and executing that game plan. So I think Rui's been awesome lately, and losing him, I think, again, is a significant loss, but it also means that my assumption would be that Dorian Finney-Smith probably starts in Rui's absence, and then you see more from DFS, probably see a bit more from Jared Vanderbilt. You might see more from Gabe Vincent, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing with the way that he's been playing recently, particularly offensively. He's kind of regressed back to being the Gabe of earlier in the season, in my opinion. Maybe you see some more Jackson and they go a bit bigger. Like he played just under 23 minutes tonight, and he had a couple games recently under 20 minutes. So maybe he's more consistently in that like mid to high 20s minutes range. And then you probably will see a bit more from Jordan Goodwin and Dalton Connect. I don't know if they go any deeper in the bench, because I think at this point, like I don't think you could trust a Shake Milton or a Cam Reddish. I think those guys have like, I think that's more break in case of emergency, and I don't think they're quite at emergency level yet. I think they'd probably have to miss another player. So if Luka rests tomorrow, I asked him after the game, what's his status going to be, because he missed the last back-to-back. He said he's going to be questionable. It'll probably be more like a game time decision. LeBron said that as of now, he thinks he's fine with his hamstring, but he said he'll see how he feels in the morning. So LeBron, we'll see what happens with his status. And then, so if they're missing LeBron or Luka or someone else in addition to Rui, I would suspect that they go a little bit deeper into the bench. But I don't think I think they'll probably just get by with Jordan Goodwin and Dalton Connect. But it's a blow, because the Lakers lose their 4th option offensively. They lose a guy that's helped with the small ball identity. I guess they can still go small with Dorian Finney-Smith and Jared Vanderbilt as the front court partners to LeBron. And we saw that lineup tonight actually for the first time. So that is something that I think we'll see a bit more of. But for the Lakers' sake, like I think that this Rui injury is hopefully not very serious, and not like maybe he misses Friday and Sunday and maybe he's back Tuesday or Thursday or something. But if it's any longer, like they're about to hit this critical stretch here where the schedule gets a lot tougher, and not having Rui for that is a big blow. So that is like I think the biggest thing to come out of this game is the Lakers had been relatively healthy for a little bit now, right? And guys like DFS and Vando had been ramping up in terms of getting off of their minutes restrictions. Luka, what was off of his minutes restriction, or is off of it now, and it felt like things were gelling. They've been winning. Everything's been going right for the most part, outside of just not being able to make shots. And this was unfortunately a blow for them. So something to monitor. It could be nothing. Again, maybe he just I have a feeling he's going to miss tomorrow just out of precautionary reasons. Like it doesn't really make sense to force it on a back-to-back when he had to exit a game early with a knee injury. Like you don't want to play with knee injuries. But if it's any longer, it is potentially a significant setback for the Lakers. Takeaway number 2 for me is going to be the defense is just at an insane level right now. And so the 5 games post All-Star break, the most points the Lakers have allowed is 102 points in 2 of those 5 games. But otherwise, they've been at 100 or fewer. On average, they are allowing 100.2 points per game over these past 5 games. They're 4-1 in that stretch, with the Charlotte loss being the lone loss. And like right now, like I thought they had a great defensive game plan against Ant. Rui started on Ant, and the key was switching, but also funneling him to the sideline and then zoning up against him. So he always had 2 or 3 bodies, like the primary defender, and then there was a secondary guy shifting along the baseline, and then there was another guy replacing him. And they just did a really good job of zoning up and being active. And I think like the Lakers have almost been playing these like hybrid pseudo like zone man looks where they will key in on a perimeter guy, and then it's everyone else is shifting over, and it's almost like a four, like it's not quite like a box and one or anything like that, but it is kind of interesting how much creativity they've had defensively in terms of being willing to cheat off guys, being willing to gamble, being willing to sort of hedge or stunt at a ball handler and then recover. Like they've been pretty aggressive with that, with some of the off-ball help, the low man rotations, and it's just kind of caused, especially with some of the like a lot of the teams they played post All-Star break have not been good offensively. Like looking at a Charlotte, a Portland, this current version of the Mavericks, and then this current version of the Timberwolves. Like these have been teams they have been able to get away with more aggressive game plans against, and I think they've done a really good job. So tonight they had 7 steals, which has been basically in line with what they've been doing. Only 2 blocks, which not as many. They've had some pretty good rear view contests and chase down blocks, not as many tonight. I mean, Minnesota is a very athletic, like they have a lot of big wings who get downhill and can finish. And I think that bothered the Lakers a little bit tonight, but for the most part, I thought the defensive game plan was really good. And despite not having that like traditional stopper on Ant within the starting lineup, they still were largely able to hold him in check, like relatively, and then bringing in DFS, Vando, and Gabe, and that just kind of shifts the dynamic of those lineups. But I think the Lakers, like, it's been really bizarre because I think when they first made the AD trade, like they had been playing really good defense up until that point, and you thought like taking AD out, taking Max out, this group is probably going to take a step back or two defensively, but then offensively they're going to the moon with Luka, and just like the potential is limitless. And it's kind of been the opposite, where they still have been good offensively in terms of just overall like the numbers with Luka and during this stretch. I mean, maybe after tonight, I haven't checked after tonight. Maybe it's gonna drop a bit, but like the defense has been what's carrying them. It's been like LeBron and Austin and Luka in a couple of the games. I mean, Luka's, he hasn't been able to find his shot, but he's still been contributing offensively. But it's been a lot of like LeBron and Austin, and then the defense just being awesome and incredible and really carrying this group. Like that's almost been their kind of like their superpower outside of LeBron just doing his thing. LeBron has been incredible. But I wanted to touch on the defense because I think tonight, like the one blemish was they gave up 23 points in transition, 12 transition opportunities for the Timberwolves, and partly that was because of the Lakers' turnovers, where they had 6 turnovers in the first quarter, ended up with only 12, so they only had 6 the rest of the way, which is really good, but it did feel like some of those turnovers led to transition opportunities, and the Lakers just weren't getting back as consistently or with as much effort as they previously had over the last like week and a half or so. So that was really it outside of the transition defense. And like I thought like Minnesota got a little hot to close the second quarter going into halftime, and they got it within like 11. But otherwise, I thought the Lakers defense was pretty good tonight, if not, elite. I mean, they held them to 102. And then takeaway number 3, before we get into the Q&A, the offense is a work in progress, we'll say. That is me putting it kindly. The offense, like outside of the Denver game, post All-Star break, the offense has not been good. They have devolved at times into iso ball and too much mismatch hunting, and just, I think, some overthinking and just sort of pinging the ball around the floor without much direction. I think the offensive organization, I have not been tracking Courageous's tracking of the offensive organization, but I would assume it's not been good over these last few games. And I think that largely falls on the coaching staff, but part of that does fall, to some extent on Luka, LeBron, Austin. Like, those are the floor generals. Those are the primary ball handlers. Those are the guys who are running the show. And I almost feel like they as they've shifted things more toward Luka, it's almost come at the expense of the offensive organization. And I don't think that's, to be clear, I'm not putting that on Luka. I am putting that more on the coaching staff. I feel like because they haven't had much time to practice, because it's been basically playing every other day, I almost feel like they've tried to simplify things a little bit and just let him run a lot of high pick and roll or double drags, or like they just have shifted the offense a bit, which was naturally going to happen with Luka being more involved. But I think there's a better balance they could strike with being a little bit more organized. And when they're organized, like I think it was better than the Dallas game, but that was a low bar to clear. And it still kind of felt like, I felt like they got bailed out by Minnesota's physicality a lot in terms of what Minnesota had 29 fouls. And of course, as I said, Lakers took 46 free throws, but it was like, if not for Luka took 12, Austin took 12, LeBron took 10. Like, if not for those guys being able to pump fake and draw fouls and get downhill, and like Minnesota just kept hacking them, I think the offense could have been even worse, because as I mentioned, the Lakers shot 41%, only 27% on threes. So they've been in a funk. And one thing of note, so I actually missed most of the post game outside of Luka because I was the pool reporter tonight. So as the pool reporter, when it gets requested, so it got requested from the Minnesota side of, they wanted some clarity as to what happened with Anthony Edwards and his ejection. So we come up with the questions to ask the refs, but then I was waiting for a good like 20 minutes or so post game. So I missed JJ, I missed LeBron, I missed Austin, and I had to do a Zoom with the ref, the crew chief, and then I asked them the 3 questions, and then they answer them. And then I have to approve the transcript, and then it gets tweeted out by NBA PR, and it gets like officially announced. So it was a weird post game for me because I ended up like, it's the first time I've been the pool reporter many nights or many home games this season, but you just being the pool reporter doesn't mean you actually have to do a pool report. Something has to rise to the level of having to do it. So tonight was one of those nights where I had to do it. And it kind of messed up my post-game flow of just not being there for JJ, for LeBron, for Austin. But in catching up with what JJ said post-game, someone asked him if he feels like the increase in defensive effort and with how the Lakers are playing defensively, of just rotating and scrambling and playing so hard on that end. Like there's so many possessions where guys are like running out of bounds because of a closeout or trying to save a ball or trying to grab a rebound or something. Like these guys are playing so hard on the defensive end. If that's had any impact on the offensive end. And JJ wasn't sure. He said it might be like, and that it's something that he's thought about, and it's something that if he deems that's the case, like they'll have to kind of figure it out. But I do wonder if that's been an unintended consequence from the defensive improvement, has been these guys have kind of lost their legs a little bit because it has kind of been, as the defense has been going up, the shooting has been going down. And I think you take the trade-off because they're winning and you don't want to mess with what's winning. And it's tricky because you don't want to say like, don't play as hard defensively. Like that is not the right mentality to have. But I think, they got to figure out how to address some of these shooting things, because it has felt like a lot of shots are either short or they've had some wild misses. I think part of it's just like, if Luka makes, maybe he goes 1 for 9 on threes tonight, 6 for 20 overall. If Luka just makes like 4 more shots, maybe a couple more threes and like 2 more twos, we're talking about a different game here. If DFS is 1 for 4 on threes, Gabe is 0 for 5, Rui's 1 for 4, LeBron's 4 for 9. So like 2 or 3 more threes, and again, that changes the complexion of this game. So right now it's kind of been like a team-wide epidemic in terms of not being able to consistently make shots. And they, even with them still kind of not having the best flow or rhythm offensively, they've been able to generate a lot of good looks. They just haven't been able to make them. But I think it's a twofold thing where they need to run the offense better and be more organized, but also they got to make shots at some point, right? Like they are getting some good looks, because whenever Luka has the ball, there's going to be 2, like they're going to double him. And then that leads to the ball pinging around and creating some good looks. But the Lakers just got to make shots at some point, right? So I think that's kind of been the biggest thing holding them back, is just that they're missing a lot of good looks. And I don't know if how much that correlates with the defensive end, but I do think when you tend to play harder, like that's why in the playoffs, when the intensity ratchets up, my brain is all over the place. When the intensity ratchets up, then you start to see like teams struggle. That's why sometimes the teams that are averaging like 110, 115 in the regular season, come playoff time, they're routinely putting up 95, 98, 104. And that's just because of how playoff basketball is. And it feels like the Lakers have been playing with a playoff-like intensity defensively, but I do wonder if that's coming at a cost to the offensive end. And again, you don't just like give up on the defensive end or stop playing as hard, but maybe you change the rotation a little bit and guys have shorter shifts, and you try to find ways to save their legs, or you change how you practice, or you change how you recover. Like you got to find a remedy, right? But I think overall, Lakers have won 16-20. They are ascending in the standings. They are going to be in the mix for the 2 and 3 seed, potentially as soon as next week. So, outside of the Rui injury, that is something to monitor, and that is something to potentially be concerned about. Outside of that, things are trending in the right way. I don't think Luka is going to continue to shoot 6 of 20 moving forward. I think he's still fighting. Like we saw the Denver game, what it can look like, especially against a good team in a big game. And I don't think they've needed to conjure that up necessarily offensively, but we'll see soon, because they play the Clippers a couple times, they play the Knicks, then they go out on that road trip. So those are my thoughts from tonight's game. Let's get into the Q&A. I see we got some super chats. First one from Rolla. Thank you for the super chat. Yo, you think Luka still rusty, or why the poop emoji shooting? I think so. I think he's clearly been a bit frustrated post game in like talking to us with his shooting, but he also said that in life, like, you face adversity and you got to find a way through it. So I think he has the right perspective on it, but I would say still rusty. Still, it was the longest injury absence of his career, and I don't think we should overlook that. I have preached patience with Luka. I can barely talk right now. I'm struggling to be honest myself. I'm pretty tired, but I've preached patience with Luka, and I think that remains the case. Like, again, let's see what he looks like in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Like, I think this is going to take some time, but in the meantime, LeBron has been remarkable offensively. LeBron has been carrying frankly, like as much of a load as he's carried all season, which is like 33 points. I didn't even talk about LeBron yet, but 33 points, 17 rebounds, led the team in both categories. 6 assists also led them there. 11 and 21 shooting, 4 threes. LeBron was great tonight and also was really good defensively, which continues his recent play. So LeBron has been carrying the group as Luka finds his footing and gets his shot back. But I think it's just a little bit of a shooting slump. If he had been a Laker from day one of the season, I don't think we would I think we would acknowledge Luka's not playing his best basketball of the season. He's a little rusty, but I don't think we would be overreacting to it. So I'm maintaining that perspective with Luka for now. Again, if it lasts another month, if it lasts another 3 weeks, then I think it's time for maybe a different conversation of like, did he come back too soon from the injury, or like, is this just for whatever reason the new normal with him of he's having an off season from a shooting perspective? But I think we are quite a ways away from that potential reality. Dotun, thank you for the super chat. Yo, the Nigerian delegation will like to implore Luka to go work on getting his rhythm from inside the arc first and not worry about the threes for now. That's a good point. And I think like he still has, so he was 1 for 9 on threes, which means he was 5 for 11 inside the arc. And that's still for his standard, not good enough. I think you've seen the deceleration, sort of drives that he has where he will get a guy on his hip. And the second he has you on his hip, it's basically game over. And then he can manipulate you and bump you. And I feel like he's missed some floaters and stuff that he typically makes. So I think to your point, like that is the way that you often get into a rhythm. And I think even in the Denver game, like he did hit that 1-3 on the left wing, but he also got some easy buckets inside. And I think when we've seen him go on some of these scoring flurries that he's gone on, it has started often with him getting a cut or getting an offensive rebound or getting a drive where he decelerates and then lays the ball in. So like, I do think there is something to him working his way into the outside the arc shots, but by first scoring inside the arc. And that's kind of the thing, is like when you're in a shooting slump, you just need to get a couple easy buckets. And that often unlocks it mentally where you're like, okay, I've seen the ball go through the basket. I don't have to think about it or worry about it or whatever. So again, I think he's going to be fine. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. A question: it would be great for you to ask JJ when everyone's back. Hayes' impact data is very positive. Why does he play so little? It's a good question. I would suspect that JJ's assessment would be that maybe there's a level of diminishing returns where if he just, like if he keeps Jackson in the high teens to low to mid 20s, like that is kind of the optimal role. And if he ups that at some point, it might again kind of have some diminishing returns and maybe backfire. I think it just comes down to, from a talent perspective and a productivity perspective, Jackson, I think there's a clear top 8 right now, and Jackson is probably number 7 in that group, and Gabe's number 8, or maybe he's number 6. But then Vando, I think, has like such an important skill with his perimeter defense and his rebounding that maybe that's a conversation between those two for like 6 and 7. But I think the top 5 are the guys that they closed with in the Dallas game with Luka, LeBron, Austin, Rui, and DFS. And they have played small a lot. So tonight, Jackson plays 23 minutes. They don't play another center. So they play 25 minutes of small ball. They have been playing a bit smaller lately. Like JJ kind of was acting like it wasn't a foregone conclusion that they were going to go super small, but or not super small, but centerless. We'll say centerless. But they've been playing like 25 plus minutes a night centerless basically for this recent stretch here. So I I would assume that it just kind of like they view. I mean, ideally, they viewed him as a backup center, and I think like there was a reason why they initially made the Mark Williams trade. It was to bring in a player they felt was more of a starting caliber center, and then there was the whole physical and medical situation. But like they traded for a center for a reason. It was a need on their trade board for a reason. So I do think it is partially more of just like how they view Jackson, and I think how they view like a proper slotting of him. And I think you can maybe argue like he should be playing a few more minutes, but I don't think he's a guy who should probably be playing more than like 27, 28 minutes most nights, like barring a Rui injury or barring a certain matchup calling for it. I think on most nights he's like a low to mid 20s type player, but even then he's been under that. And I think you bring up a fair point there. Easy peasy. Thank you for the super chat. Bad audition for him, but Alexander Walker, a realistic target with MLE. Winning these games with Luka shooting like this makes me more optimistic. I would say that Alexander Walker, he's a tough one for me because I think you could talk me into him being a little bit like more than the MLE. Like he's probably an MLE player. But if he got like 345, I wouldn't be like shocked by that because of how good he is on the defensive end. And he's really, as you said, not the best audition tonight, but he has really stepped up as a shooter this year and has continued to improve on that end of the floor. And I think in general has gotten better as an offensive player. Like that was kind of the knock on him was he was a little bit more raw offensively, but he had the defensive abilities. And so he's a guy who could defend either backcourt spot and even some threes. And then he's been a in that high 30s to 40-ish% 3-point range for most of the season, and is just like a tough winning player. So I think now one thing here, just to be clear, the Lakers currently do not project to have the non-taxpayer MLE available. That would require either LeBron taking a pay cut or them shedding salary in a salary dumping trade. So it is possible. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. But as things stand, they project more likely to have the taxpayer MLE, which is only $5.7 million, which is far too little for a guy like Alexander Walker. So I think it just comes down to what they which path they end up going in terms of roster construction and can they even get the non-taxpayer MLE available? Clinton Ehrlich, thank you for the super chat. Do you attribute Luka's shooting woes to rust, psyching himself out, poor conditioning, or the lingering calf injury? If I was ranking them based on the four theories you're throwing out there, I would go rust number 1, lingering calf injury number 2, poor conditioning number 3, psyching himself out number 4. I don't think Luka is psyching himself out. This is a guy who went professional at 14 years old. Like he has played in every condition possible and has had countless big games, big moments, clutch moments since he was literally a teenager. I don't think I think that's a mentally tough dude. And I don't think that is it. I think it's probably a combination of the other three of rust, conditioning, and calf injury. And I do attribute the conditioning partly to the calf injury, and that I think those two kind of go hand in hand. But I think Luka's going to be fine. I don't want to look past what he just did to Denver. He made the Lakers' biggest nemesis look helpless. It completely dominated that game. Again, he's had some rust, but I don't want to overreact. But I understand the concern in general. I get it. I'm just trying to keep the perspective here. Sean, thank you for the super chat. We'll gladly take the win with a fire emoji. I thought the officiating was pretty bad tonight. Way too many whistles and bad no calls late in the game. Got to work on the free throws too. That could hurt us later on. I agree. There, for no reason, should be a game where you are taking 72 free throws combined between the two teams. I do think Minnesota was too, let's say, liberal with their fouling. Like, they basically were daring the refs to call a foul on every possession, and they almost did. I mean, I don't know how Lakers took 82 field goal attempts, but with the 46 free throws, that's not necessarily 23 trips to the line, because sometimes it's a technical or sometimes it's an and one. But I mean, it was almost like a quarter of their, more than a quarter of their possessions were fouls defensively in terms of Minnesota. So that's just like, that's inexcusable. And again, partly that's on Minnesota and how aggressive and physical they're being. But I think at some point you got to just let them play. And I don't think there were some calls I felt like they just didn't need to make, to your point. Like the Austin one, even Austin said that they caught him on camera saying he didn't think he got fouled, and they challenged it. They reviewed it. They kept the call, but that was probably one that, like, in the moment you just don't call. So yeah, I mean, too many foul calls. No one's there to see free throws. And yeah, I mean, the Lakers have been a much better free throw shooting team this year than in previous seasons, but it will occasionally rear its head where they have a poor free throw shooting night. And they're often in a dogfight on those nights. So yeah, I mean, they missed 14 free throws tonight. Far too many. Braden, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the latest mailbag, Jovan. You answered so many of our questions. I just wanted to let you know we appreciate you a lot, Brate. Go Lakers. Thank you, Braden. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. And yeah, I wish I as I said, I got over 90 questions in for the mailbag between YouTube and X. That I'm pretty sure that's a record for how many mailbag questions I've gotten. So I ended up answering around 30. And of course, there were some duplicates. So like there was a lot of center questions or different things, but I tried to answer as many as I could. Ricky Burt, dog, go to sleep with the laughing while crying emoji. I will go to, I'm going to go an hour. So I'll go an hour and then I will get some rest. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. LeBron should be in the MVP combo. He needs to take a few games off during this crazy stretch in March. We don't want a gas LeBron come playoff time. I agree. I talked about it on I forgot which mail. I think it was the second mailbag. I said that I have a vote this year, and right now I think I would strongly consider LeBron at number 4, number 5 on my MVP ballot, and would consider him for first team All-NBA. And I think he's in that conversation right now, especially with, I think earlier in the season, AD was averaging more points, more field goal attempts, higher usage percentage. That has shifted, obviously, that shifted at some in like early to mid December. That started shifting decisively in LeBron's favor, and then also that coincided with him improving on the defensive end, and he's been awesome on the defensive end for going on a good 2+ months now. So you factor both those things in, and it's like, yeah, I mean, not many players are playing at a higher level on both sides of the ball right now. And really, even some of the guys who I think are ahead, like I think Shea and Jokic are the top 2, and then Tatum is probably in there just because of Boston. Giannis is putting up really good numbers, but Milwaukee has not really had the results. So I guess technically they've had a similar season to the Lakers. But yeah, I mean, I think LeBron is right there. And I agree. I think you want to be careful with when you rest him, but ideally Luka's in a better rhythm, and you could pick a game against like a lesser opponent where you should be able to get by with like Luka and Austin, and ideally Rui's back by then, and you can win that game. Lee Baggy, thank you for the super chat. I was waiting for this one. Did you hear LeBron's take on the face of the league after the game tonight? Yes, I did. I agree with him to an extent. I think the problem, in my opinion, is that a lot of people that speak highly of the game and try to highlight the positives with the game don't have big enough platforms, and the people with the biggest platforms covering the game often are the ones who are fixating on all that is wrong with the game or the negatives with the game. And there are certainly exceptions. Like I think this is where there's a big void in coverage without Zach Lowe, because Zach Lowe was always celebrating the game and the minutia and just breaking it down at a high level, but also making it accessible to people. And that's what I try to do to some extent, and I haven't been able to dive into it to the level I've wanted to in terms of like X's and O's and graphics and stuff. And I think that's, as I continue to build out the show and the podcast and stuff, I want to do more of that stuff. But I think I think he's referencing more the TV talking heads, and there is a lot of negativity that comes with the debate shows and the TV analysts. The one thing I would push back on is like he said, I think the implication was like that everyone who covers the league on a daily basis is like that, and I don't quite agree with that. I also think that there's a balance, right, where you don't want to like lie or fabricate analysis. Like if a player has, like if LeBron has a game where he has 8 turnovers, like that is something that is worth talking about. And like, why did LeBron have 8 turnovers? Or like it was not his best decision-making or playmaking night or whatever. Right. So like, I think there's nuances within it where I think sometimes it's like I've dealt with this as a media person covering these guys. Like sometimes it feels like they don't want to be criticized. And I think if you're criticizing the basketball, it is fair game within reason, as long as, if like, because LeBron actually had one of those games recently, right, where he had, I think, 8 or 9 turnovers, but he also might have had a triple double or 30 plus points, like, and that, like, for me, my job that night is to try to contextualize all that of like, LeBron did have the 30-point triple double, but he also had 8 or 9 turnovers that did kind of detract from it. But like overall, he contributed more than he took away. But I think then some shows or podcasts or whatever will turn it into like, well, LeBron shouldn't be running the offense. It should be Luka running the offense. Or like they try to create like some drama or like a narrative with it, when it's just like, no, just break it down, like what happened, and try to weigh calculate like the situation and what it means. And that's what I try to do. I know there are other people, a lot of the top Laker channels try to do that, but from like a general perspective, that's I give shout out to Jason Timpf, who I think does a good job with that at the volume with Hoops Tonight. But I mean, it is unfortunate that I think a lot of the biggest voices in the industry, and I'm not going to name names, I'm not going to name shows, but I think you guys know a lot of the people or the shows that are the culprits here. So I think LeBron was speaking more so to them. I think the one issue or slight issue I had with it was it felt like he was lumping in all NBA media, and I just don't agree with that. And like, maybe that's his experience, and maybe he's turning on a certain channel and he's seeing certain things, or he's listening to a certain podcast and he's hearing certain things. So like his experience with it is influenced a certain way. But I would say like even just the people covering the team, like I don't think we're like overly negative about him or about the team or about just the game, the state of the game. Like I feel like I've gotten a lot of questions from you guys about the state of the game, and I try to like talk through it from my perspective, and I try to keep just kind of weigh both sides of that argument. So it was interesting, and I could say that there was more that was said after that I unfortunately could not divulge, but yeah, it was interesting. It was like LeBron is he still has his fastball, and he will occasionally just go off on a tangent on something, and it's always fascinating to hear what he has to say about it. And this was another one. Tom Zayas friend of the show. I got to have you on at some point. Sup, Jovan, do you think the Lakers will begin to settle into better offense and organization once Luka gets settled in? And thank you for the super chat. I think so. I think a big issue right now is I want to say they've only had 2 practices with Luka, maybe 3. So I think and they keep not having shoot arounds and having these like walkthroughs at the arena. So they have a closed walkthrough. Typically it's like 4 to 4:30 or 4:30 to 5. And then they don't have a shoot around. So I think right now they've kind of been victims of their schedule and having these back-to-backs and having the less than ideal start to the post All-Star break stretch with the rescheduled game after the postponement and going Charlotte, Portland, then to Denver. Like it's not been ideal, I would say. So I think that's the biggest thing holding them back. I think once they have a couple more practices, and we'll see, maybe they practice Saturday. I doubt it coming off of a back-to-back, but maybe Monday that they have a practice, and that, you know, could be another opportunity to, because I think it's important that they should try to practice either Monday or Wednesday, one of the 2 off days before they go off on this road trip. So I think once Luka gets more settled in, and I made this point before, but like it's one thing when you add in, like, Dorian Finney-Smith is a plug and play player because he has a pretty simple set of tasks on both sides of the ball. You can plug Dorian Finney-Smith. Like, you could go put him on OKC, you could go put him on Boston, you could go put him on Denver, you could go put him on Cleveland. He's going to start in some of those places, or he's going to be a primary bench guy, and he's largely going to do the same things he's done for the Lakers. Luka is a, like, it is such a makeover to the Lakers offense and the way it functions that I think this is, again, going to be a bit of a process, as we've seen so far. But I do expect once they have a little bit more practice time, once Luka is a bit more settled with the playbook and with his rhythm and shakes off some of this rust, I do think the offense will be better. And that, to me, like that is arguably the most encouraging thing of all this, is like, I don't see a world in which the Lakers offense is this bad the rest of the way. And sure, maybe the defense comes down a little bit, but if you can be top 10 on both sides of the ball and arguably top 5 or pushing toward that top 5 on both sides of the ball, which I think is possible, that is a legitimate championship contender. And that's why I've been saying for, you know, since the Denver win, like I really think this team could win a championship, and we'll see. We'll see. I mean, the Rui thing now is a curveball here. It's a bit of a wild card that like could affect how things look, especially with the standings. But assuming the Rui thing isn't too serious, I expect them to get into a better offensive offensive rhythm soon. Excuse me. Primo Near, thank you for the super chat. Hi, Jovan. Can we meet before the Nets game? Yes, I would actually say meeting at halftime is better for me. Pre-game is typically pretty crazy, but for those who are going to be in New York at the Nets game, I'll be in New York for about 4 days. I get in Sunday. We'll be there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. My brother's out there, so I am going to prioritize that and spending time with him, obviously. And I will have to work, of course, on that Monday. But if you guys are at the game, would love to meet as many of you as possible. And I know this is either the second or third time you asked me this, and I appreciate it. And yeah, let's meet up. So I would say either DM me on Instagram at Jovan Buha, or send me an email, jbuha@theathletic.com. Pieter K, thank you for the super chat. What's up with Dalton? Low key, we kind of need him. The Lakers do need him, but he has not been the same player. My read, and I would really hope I don't get aggregated, just like this is me psychoanalyzing it. I don't really like to psychoanalyze, but I feel like this one's like kind of obvious. Like I do think he's been a little bit in his head or in his feels since this whole situation. He has not looked like the same player. I thought, for the most part, he had been struggling pre-trade, but then like a little, like there was a few games there right before the trade where he started to kind of break out and have some double-digit scoring performances and like look more like he did back in November. And then since then, he's really been just, kind of more back to being the version he was right before that mini breakout, and even worse in some cases. And I think the defense, like the scouting report is out on Dalton. When Dalton's on the floor, he is the duck. He is the guy that teams target, and they really target him on the ball, off the ball, bringing him into screening actions. So I think the defensive end is arguably like, that's even a bigger issue than the offensive end, because I think it, like tonight, the guy who actually struggled the most, the Lakers were minus 17 in Vando's minutes, but they were also minus 2 in Dalton's minutes. He was the only other player in Gabe. I mean, the bench, I guess, was rough tonight because Lakers were also minus 5 with Gabe on the floor, but those 3 guys were the only guys of the 10 that played that had negative plus minuses. So the other 7, Luka, the Lakers were had a 0 plus minus. They were neutral in Luka's minutes, but everyone else was a positive. So 6 of the 10 were positive, 1 was neutral, and then 3 were negative, and Dalton was one of them. And it just, at this point, he does not look like a confident player out there. And like Luka set him up. There was one possession where he hit him with I think it was a corner 3, like created a look for him, and he bricked that, and it was like, it looks like his confidence is shot right now. Like, I don't really know how else to say it. And like longer term, I think he will figure it out, at least on the offensive end, but I don't think that it's likely going to be this season. Ohm says 100% agreed, but one bad performance from LeBron affects the GOAT debate. Not for me. For some people, yeah. I mean, I've let my feelings known on, be known on the whole LeBron MJ debate. And I'm not going to go down that road, but like, if there's a guy who deserves to be a bit skeptical or like jaded towards the media, it is LeBron James, because of how much BS he has put up with through the media. And I know they're the people that will push back and be like, look at all the praise and look at all, but like from the moment he was in high school, like he had, and look, he put some of it on himself. He got chosen one tattooed on his back, but like the amount of scrutiny and pressure and just amount of like hate he has gotten throughout his career, especially after the decision, which was like, in retrospect, just like, sure, a misstep on his part, probably shouldn't have made it into that big of a deal if he was going to be leaving Cleveland. But at the same time, people acted like he committed a crime or something, like on national TV, when it was just like, no, he was a 25-year-old entering his prime who decided to go somewhere else where he was going to play with his friends. And he also donated to charity, like did a special where all the money raised went to charity. Like I think the decision in retrospect was, again, not the best decision, but not it did not deserve the vitriol that LeBron got and really got for like at least until the Cleveland title, but even by some people all the way up until like the Lakers title. And then I think he kind of had a grace period, and now some of it has started to come back. And so I think if anyone wants to feel the way that LeBron feels, I guess like it's him, but I don't fully agree with it from, in my opinion, a more comprehensive look at the industry. All right, going to go a few more minutes. Royal asks, any update on Rui? No update. He did leave before we got there post game, so make of that what you will. But JJ didn't want to speculate. I mean, again, I would assume he's out tomorrow, and then from that point on, I think it's going to depend on like what the MRIs say. Like he's, to my knowledge, not even had like the imaging done yet, so still some time there. Masato says, would have been better if Max was here and DK was shipped to Dallas, but Nico probably wanted Max more. There's also the financial component where DK and Max is making almost double DK. So you like, it would have changed, the trade. Like DK and Christian Wood, I still don't even know if that was enough to match Max. And maybe you would have had, like, I think the more interesting thing is, would you have done, let's say it was DK and Christian Wood, let's just say it worked hypothetically. Would you have done like DK plus another pick or DK plus a swap to keep Max. I think that's more of an interesting conversation. Jay Note says, would rather watch Cam out there over Connect at this point, TBH. I think you're going to see more Jordan Goodwin and maybe some Shake if Dalton continues to struggle, but I think Cam is still buried in the doghouse. I don't like, maybe they dust him off, but he has been behind Goodwin and behind Shake for quite a while now. Like he's been basically buried in the doghouse since like early January. Julian asks, hey, Yov, what happened to Luka shooting? I think it's a combination of rust from being out so long, still dealing with some of the lingering effects with the calf injury, still getting his legs under him. It was the longest stretch he's ever missed due to injury. It was also a lower body injury. I don't think he's quite back to being in peak form in terms of conditioning and shape and all that stuff. So I think there's several factors. I also think new offense, like things are running a little bit differently. So I think it's a combination of things, but I'm not worried long term. The Protractor 0. So let me, and I will add some clarity here just because I misspoke in my last mailbag and then I offered some clarity in the comments. It was a partial misspeaking. So the deadline to cut a player and them still be playoff eligible is Saturday, March 1st. So the Lakers have 2 days to decide if they want to cut Reddish or anybody else for that player to still be playoff eligible, which is like a nice thing to do. If you're going to waive someone, you waive them so they can still play in the playoffs and have a chance to contribute. Now, typically what happens in these scenarios is like, if they are considering waiving someone, they will give them that heads up. And then it's on that player's agent to, sift through the league and comb the league for potential opportunities and see what teams have open roster spots, what teams would be interested in Reddish or player X, whatever. And then see, is there a situation that makes sense of, okay, please, if you're going to likely waive Reddish or whoever else at the end of the season to convert Goodwin or Koloko or Jemison, then just waive them now so they could play in the playoffs. We have Team X that is ready to sign them. So if Reddish is waived in the next 2 days, it either means there's a team ready to sign him or the Lakers have made up their mind that they are going to waive him at the end of the season and convert one of the two-way guys. And they're just doing him the favor of like, okay, we're giving you the flexibility to be able to sign with a playoff team if you find one eventually. Now, it still doesn't make sense for the Lakers to convert any of the two-way guys to the roster because the cost of a two-way player versus a vet minimum, even players that are cheaper because they're not of a certain years of service, it's still a difference there that just like doesn't really make sense for a first apron team. So whether it's Goodwin or Koloko or Jemison, I would suspect they still get converted if they get converted at the end of the season. Now, technically, the Lakers can waive multiple players, but I don't see them waiving more than two. And if it is two, I would say it's probably going to be Reddish and Alex Len, depending on how the Alex Len experience goes the rest of the way. But like Shake has 2 more years of non-guaranteed contract, which could be valuable in a potential trade. And then they also have Markieff Morris, who is a important figure in the locker room. He is someone who has the respect of LeBron and Luka. He was part of the 2020 title team. He was part of the 2024 finals run with Dallas. He's kind of like this Udonis Haslem type figure in the locker room where he's a guy no one wants to mess with. and like when he speaks, people listen. So Keefe is a guy that if we were going by like a meritocracy, maybe he would be the guy that would actually make the most sense. Like if like gun to my head, I would rather play Cam Reddish than Markieff Morris. However, in terms of like locker room hierarchy and who's more important, Markieff Morris is at a higher level. So I think realistically, if they waive someone, it's likely going to be Cam. that if they waive a second player, it would likely be Alex Len because, again, Shake Milton, they have some flexibility there with throwing him in to trades down the line. And then Markieff Morris, I just think LeBron and Luka want him around. And then otherwise, the other 11 players don't make any sense to waive. So I think Shake and Keefe will be kept on the roster. And at most, they will waive 2 players. Now, again, they can so as of right now, they can only waive 1, like currently, and sign 1, and it keep them under the second apron. Later in the season, when the prorated amount goes down, they could waive a second one, add a second one, waive a third one, add a third one if they so choose. But I think looking at the candidates to be cut and how the Lakers view those guys and how they're viewed in the locker room and whatnot, I think it really comes down to like Reddish and Len, and more likely Reddish than Len. But also, if Len just doesn't get any burn like the rest of the time, it's like, why not just convert Jemison or Koloko and give them that opportunity versus Len? Because clearly, they played Len 2 games and then it was like pulling the plug. So that was my spiel. But technically, tomorrow's not the deadline. They can technically cut Cam at any point until the final day of the regular season. It's just if to kind of do him the courtesy, it would be by Saturday to allow him to still play in the playoffs. Okay, I see I went a little bit over. Rich here, thank you for the super chat. Sign Goodwin, he's ballin'. I think right now that it would be my prediction would be they sign Goodwin and they cut Reddish, but that would happen later in the season. I think Goodwin is good to play the rest of the way as a 2-way guy and then be converted. So that saves the Lakers money and it doesn't really make a difference. Like he as long as he's converted by the end of the regular season, he'll be playoff eligible. So for the Lakers, it's like the best of both worlds where you got a 2-way guy who's cheap and contributing. And then you also save some money on the back end and then eventually convert him. And Dante Dino 704. What about waiving Kleba? The problem with waiving Kleba is he has a $11 million contract for next season. So you'd be on the hook for that. So you just have $11 million of dead cap space or cap on your sheet. So if Kleba was expiring, he could potentially make some sense with the injury, but because he has an extra year, you lose that $11 million and that's on your cap sheet that doesn't go away. Like you could stretch it and maybe it's like a few $1 million over the next few years, but like, do you want to really stretch that out and have that affecting your like right now, every dollar matters for the Lakers for this season. My box score just fell. Imagine if just think about how that could factor in next season or the season after. Like maybe this summer they trade for a higher price center. Like that's something that they're going to have to calculate and factor in. So like every dollar is going to matter. So really keeping Kleba, it makes him a valuable trade chip this summer as an $11 million expiring. Gabe will also be in that 12 million range, and then Rui in the 18 million range. But with the way Rui's playing, I don't think they're going to trade him. Or I think it's less likely than not, to be clear. But I think I'm going to wrap here unless I missed that. Did I miss? No, I got all the super chats. I will be back here. And as Fake Charlie says, Kleba killed us when he played. Like I think if I'll say this, if there's a way that he could come back and play, like I think that could be a sneaky addition late in the season because he's a stretch 4.5 who has some mobility defensively, is a good shooter, and is like a decent rebounder. Like I actually think he would fit with the way the Lakers play and could be the 9th guy to the top 8 or be the 9th guy with like Jordan Goodwin, kind of depending on the night. And like that could be a valuable addition. But I'm going to wrap here. I'm going to be back tomorrow after the Lakers Clippers game. So be on the lookout for that. I will look forward to talking to you all then. I'm going to try and get some sleep and recover for tomorrow's game. But that'll do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Again, I will be back on Friday night in less than 24 hours. Also, it is Luka's birthday. It is Luka's 26th birthday. So Luka is officially the Lakers' 26-year-old superstar. But shout out to the Late Night Gang. I appreciate you all supporting. I appreciate you all watching. And again, I will talk to you all very soon.